Hey, good morning, everyone. Before I start, let me just quickly show you. Some of you are texting me, you cannot find it then, or you cannot find the class notes. Actually, for example, I changed the way I post things a little bit, not too much. So this is today's participation assignment or today's lessons. Everything is inside. So start submitting your attendance, and how you can find it. It's in the class notes link. So it says class notes and the link is right here. If you click it, it will take you this PDF that you always see in each classroom. And the attendance is the orange button. You just need to click it and submit your attendance. Okay. And every time during the waiting time at the beginning of the class, it's because of the grading matter. That's why I changed it a little bit. So the second thing, it's about the do now. For the do now, it's still in the link. You can still find it here, or you don't have to go all the way that. Once you open up the assignments, it says then, complete the then, and link is right here. It will also take you like the same then that you need to do on the notes, okay? It's the same thing. So this is the fastest way to go to then. An exit ticket is obviously at the end of the class, you need to do this. It's a one question. It's a break it down into steps. Okay, so I will remind this at the end of the classroom, not now. So now we're going to start the lesson. So hope everybody can see this. Students are still joining. It's a 26. I think just the 5 students just joined it. For those, I'm not going to repeat again. Make sure you submit attendance and do now when you have a time at the end of the class. Okay. So today, good morning, everyone. So today we're going to talk about equations again, but it's a different now. It's equations with distribution and like terms. And there is a one IXL. It's a new IXL, by the way, equations with like terms, okay? And then today's objective is I can distribute integers and other rational numbers to solve equations. So let's talk about the notes. Like we need to put now everything we'll learn together, okay? So by now, you've learned how to use a distributive property. So distributive property to simplify expressions, okay? So for example, this is the example that like it's an expression, but you need to apply distributive property. Distributive property was if you see any number in front of the parentheses, for example, here there is a -3. So that means you need to distribute that number by multiplying with every single term inside of parentheses. Okay, so let's do this without considering the negative sign. So my first term is 3 times 2x, that would become 6x. I'm not going to say plus or minus yet. And the second one, 3 times 4, that would become 12. The next thing you need to know, if you see negative sign in front of the parentheses, which is the number is -3, everything inside of parentheses, when I say everything, every single sign will flip other way, opposite. So for example, 2x is positive. Because of that, the first term will become negative. And in front of the 4, there is a negative sign. Because of that, in front of the 12, it becomes positive. Because of the negative sign that comes in front of the parentheses. Okay, so this is the one that we learned like 2 weeks ago. And you have learned also how to solve problems with two-step equations. So solving two-step equations, it's basically you need to separate left and right side of the equal sign, because equal sign tells you like a teeter-totter, you need to keep it balanced left and right side. So solving equation, it's a simplifying, I mean, it's isolating or leaving x alone at the end, okay? So you're not gonna touch the x term, so you need to isolate this first. And to do this, you need to cancel out 24. Because if the 24 is positive in the equation, you need to subtract the 24 from both sides of the equation, okay? To keep it balanced, the teeter-totter. So 24s are cancel out on the left side and bring it down the variable term. It's a negative 6x and equals. So now you need to do the subtraction on the right side. 15 minus 24. We already learned how negative numbers, how to subtract numbers. So 15 minus 24, that would become negative 9, okay? And the last thing, you still need to isolate the variable, but there is a number in front of the variable. That means it's multiplied. If you divide by negative 6 on the both sides, the reason why we're dividing by negative 6, it's because negative 6 is multiplied with variable x, okay? So now negative 6's are cancelled out, and only x would be left on the left side, and that is equal to, so negative 9 divided by negative 6. So in this case, 2 negative becomes positive. We know the fact that when you divide the same sign numbers, it always becomes positive. 9 divided by 6, if you use your calculator, that would become 1.5, okay? So we already learned how to solve this kind of equations or two-step equations by following those 2 steps. Next slide, let's move on. So now let's see if we have an equation with parentheses. We also learned this, okay? So let's do this step by step. What is the first step when you see an equation, in expression, in everything? The first thing you need to do, take care of the parentheses. So to take care of the parentheses, take a look if there is any number in front of it or at the end. So in my equation, there is a number in front of it. So it's a 4. Look at this. Because of that, you need to apply step number 1, distributive property. I'm going to say distributive property, okay? So to do this, you need to multiply that number with every single term inside of parentheses. 4 times x, that would become 4x, minus 4 times 6, that would become 24, okay? And it says 16.8. Step number 2. So we need to separate left and right side of the equal sign to keep it balanced. And take a look, where is the variable term? The variable term is 4x. You're not going to touch this. You need to isolate the variable term. To do this, add 24. Step number 2. Adding 24, it's because in front of the 24, it's a negative. If you do opposite of negative 24, you cancel out. That means it disappears. If you do this, do the same thing on the other side of the equal sign. It's a 24. Let's clear out. This is my step number 2. So 24s are cancel out. Bring it down the variable term. It's 4x. And that is equal to, and now you need to do the addition on the other side of the equal sign. 16 plus 24, that would become 40.8. Okay? And step number 3, so take a look. Now, what do we need to do? So you need to isolate the variable x. And there is a 4 is multiplied to the x. Because of that, you need to divide, by 4 on the both side of the equal sign. So I'm going to divide left side by 4. I'm going to divide the right side by 4 and clear out your spot. So the last step is actually, you don't need that. It's just write it down the answer. The last step is the answer. So 4s are cancel out. 4 divided by 4, it becomes 1. It disappears. 40.8 divided by 4, it's a 10.2. Okay, so this is the solving equations when you have parentheses. Let's take a look another example, but this time you're going to see a negative sign in front of the parentheses. Okay, let me go with the same steps that I do. Because if there is a parentheses, your first step is always distributive property. Okay, so you need to distribute 5, or you need to multiply that 5 with every single number inside of parentheses. So first, let's take care of the numbers, then take care of the signs. 5 times 3, that would become 15m. And 5 times 1, that would become 5. Now let's take care of the sign. Because if there is a negative sign in front of the parentheses, it's a negative 5, everything inside, so negative 3m will become positive, positive. The first term is positive. Because of the in front of 1, there is a negative 1, a negative sign, so this become positive. So everything is become positive because of the negative sign in front of parentheses. And then just write it down, everything as it is. So it's equal 110. Step number 2, it's a subtract 5. Do you know why? Because I need to isolate the variable term, which is 15m, okay, and on the both sides. It's because the 5 is added to the variable term. If you do that, let's clarify this. Let's simplify. These positive 5 and negative 5, they cancel out. Bring it down to variable term. It's a 15m, and that is equal to 110 minus 5. It's 105. Okay. And next step. So I still have a job to leave the variable term alone, which is m. And the 15 is multiplied to the m. You always go opposite when you solve equations. And because of 15 is multiplied, so you need to do the divide by 15, okay? Divide by 15. And so you need to do on the both side of the equal sign. It's because you need to keep it balanced, your teeter-totter. So 15s are cancel out, only m will be left, and this is the answer, by the way, the last step. So equals 105 divided by 15. Let me try to this in my head. 15 times 2 is 30, 30 times 3 is 90, 90 plus 15 is, so 6, it's 7. Okay? So let's see what we have on the next slide. Okay, so as you can see in the agenda, the first thing was applying the distributive property, and now we're going to talk about the like terms. What happens if you see a like terms in equations? So that means you need to do this simplifying. Okay, so you still remember, I hope you still remember how to simplify expressions by combining like terms, simplifying expressions by combining like terms. So I'm going to review this quickly. It's a we do part. So my recommendation, you need to get a piece of paper. If this kind of question is in your benchmark, always underline like the like terms. So that will give you the clear idea. For example, 14n and 8n, those are like terms. That means you can combine them. You can add and subtract them. Okay, so let's take care of that one first. So in front of 14, there is a negative sign. Be careful with that. In front of 8, there is a plus sign. So that means negative 14 plus 8. If you use your calculator, that would become negative 6n. Thank you. So the next one, it's the numbers. So you have 10 and you have 2. And take a look what sign you have in front of them. There is a negative sign in front of 2. There is a negative sign in front of 10. So negative 10 minus 2, that would become negative 12. Okay, this is the simplifying expressions. So we're going to do this when we solve equations. If we see like terms in the equation, okay? And the next example, let's take care of the numbers first. So 14 and 10. The signs in front of those numbers are positive. That means it's easy. Just add them up. So 14 plus 10, that would become 24. And take a look at the variable term. There is a 1x and there is a 14x. So in front of the 14x, it's negative. In front of the x, there is a no sign. That means it's a positive. X minus 14, that would become negative 13. And you need to put the variable next to it because you're working on with the variable terms, okay? And the last thing, it's a two different kind of action. Number one, you need to do the distribution. Number two, you need to simplify the expression. So let's do the distribution first. So there is a no negative sign in front of 7, so we don't have to worry about the switching signs. So 7 times 11, 7 times 12. The first will be negative 77 plus it's a 94k. 7 times 12k, it's a 94k. Plus, so whatever comes after, which is plus 12. So you need to write it down at the end. And then take a look. What like terms you have? So you have 77 and you have number 12. Both of them are like terms because those are the numbers itself. And in front of 12, it's a positive. In front of 77, it's a negative. So that means negative 77 plus 12. So that would become negative 65. Okay? Sorry about telling this slowly because it was going on in my mind. So it's the other thing, the 94K, it's alone. If it's alone, you just need to write it down as it is. So this will become the simplest form of given expression. And let's take a look what it looks like combining like terms in equations. So these questions are very similar questions that you will see in your IXL practice today. So the first step, because if there is a no parentheses, just to combine like terms, take care of the like terms. That's the step number one. So when I say that, so on the left side of the equal sign, the both terms has a z. That means you can add and subtract them. So 10z minus 8z, that would become 2z. Okay, so I combine the like terms and just write it down everything as it is. It's equal 14. Step number two, so now the variable z, it's multiplied by 2. So that means you need to divide by 2. Divide by 2, okay? So if you divide by 2, do the same thing on the other side of the equal sign. And your simplest form, so step number 3, it's your answer. Okay, so that means 2's are cancelled out, only z would be left, equals half of 14, that would become 7. So as you see, it's not that much hard. It's just the extra step that you need to consider. If there is a like terms, combine them. That's it. Let me show you one more example. Sometimes you may see like more than one terms, like a like terms. Okay, so for example, 10b, the term has a b, 8b, and b. Okay, all of them has a b. That means you can combine the like terms. So step number 1, it's a like terms. And let's take a look. So 10b minus 8b minus b. So you need to combine them. 10b minus 8b, that would become 2b's. 2b minus 1b, that would become b itself. Okay, I got the answer. I don't have to divide by anything because b is alone now. So this is a one-step equation, okay? And let me give you another example. So this time you will have negative numbers as a term, okay? So again, if you take a look like carefully, on the left side of the equal sign, there is a 8p and there is a 18p, right? And also pay attention what signs you have in front of those terms, because when you combine them, those are very important. Let's do the step number 1, the like terms. Okay? And negative 8p plus 18p, that would become positive 10p. You can use your calculator. Negative 8 plus 18 is what? And then I'm going to do another step like together, because we know the fact if two negative signs comes together like this minus and negative 16, that would become positive, which is positive 16. Okay? And everything remains the same. So I did the 2 steps at a time. So it's a negative 4 on the other side of the equal sign. Step number 2, we know the fact that because of we're not touching the variable term, there is a 16 is added. So that means you need to subtract 16 from both sides. Okay? So now let's simplify. 16s are cancelled out, bring it down the variable term, it's a 10p, and that is equal to negative 4 minus 16. If you use your calculator again, so that would become negative 20. Okay? And last step would be, it's because of the variable p, it's multiplied with 10, you need to divide by 10 on the both sides of the equal sign. So that means divide by 10, okay? So the simplest form, or your answer would be in this equation, it's 10s are cancelled out, p would be alone, and negative 20 divided by 10, that would become negative 2, okay? So your answer, the last one is your answer. Okay, so this is today's lesson. And what I will ask you now, I want you to try your best in this IXL. It's S8 and it's a 11:08. We have how many minutes until 26? It looks like we have 18 minutes. So after 10 minutes, I'm gonna remind you guys there is an exit ticket. So it's an independent practice time. So whenever you have a questions while you're doing this IXL practice, just type in the chat box. I'll do the explanation or I'll do the reteaching. Okay, so you guys have 10 minutes on your IXL and then exit ticket, and that's all for today. Okay, so you guys can start now. 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes and counting.
Okay, class, 10 minutes is over. If you couldn't finish IXL S8, it becomes your assignment or homework or classwork or the work that you need to make up by its due date, which is Saturday. And before you go, let me do the lesson summary. So the lesson summary, it's actually these steps that we learned until when we solve equations, and we call them multi-step equation because the steps are adding up. That's why we call it multi-step if there is a more than 2 steps. And the first thing, like if you see in the equation parentheses, you need to take care of it by distributing the number outside of parentheses. Distributing means multiplying the number with every single term inside of parentheses. Then check if there is a like terms, the terms that has the same variables or the terms that only numbers, more than 2 or more than 2. You need to combine them all. And then you will see at the end like a 2-step equation. So the last 2 steps, it's actually the same steps that we always do in the if-then method when we solve equations. It's isolating the variable term by adding and subtracting a number, whatever the number is that comes after the variable term, and isolating the variable, this is the last term, by multiplying or dividing the same number that comes in front of the variable. Okay, so these are the steps. My recommendation is if you're online student or all students, until you get these steps, like understand perfectly, just write it down on a piece of paper, like a poster that you can post it in your house, that you can see all the time these steps. That will help you to remember what to do when you do multi-step equations. And we have 5 minutes left till end of the classroom. So what I will ask you now is go to your exit ticket. This will grade it. And I broke it down, these question, this solving equation problem. It's a -8 outside of parentheses, like step by step. So what happens when you do the first step or distributing the number, the first step? The second step, it's a adding or subtracting number. So this is the result. And the last step is what is the result for this equation? What do you think the value m has to be for the equation? So I broke it down as a 3 questions. So that'll help you to reach to the correct answer. Okay, it's only 1 problem. That's it. If anyone needs help or reteaching, you guys need to let me know by sending an email or reminding me during the intervention time. I can do the reteaching.